Welcome to InterPartyConflict, the podcast where we answer your questions so you can have the best tabletop gaming experience possible. My name is Gabe.
And my name is Jeff.
And we're going to answer your questions today, but first, I have a question for you, Jeff.
Yeah.
How are you doing today?
Pretty good.
Cool.
Pretty good.
Cool.
We had our Roll20 game last night.
Yes, we did. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'm glad people had a lot of fun. I was a little, I don't know, I'm pretty nervous with DMing and stuff like that. It's only really technically my second time doing it. So.
Sure. That nervousness, like it gets less, but it never goes away.
Sure. So yeah, and like I was like, I think I over prepared myself because I had a bunch of stuff in front of me, and like I was just sort of like overwhelmed whenever something came up. I'm like, wait, where did I leave that? Over here. So like my DM's intuition, hasn't kicked in yet.
Sure. So, but no, you did a great job. It was a lot of fun.
Well, yeah.
We still haven't finished that adventure, so I'm looking forward to another repeat of that.
Yeah, I think I'll try to get things to wrap up in the next session. So
sure,
and then I'll maybe make some tweaks to the adventure that now that I kind of like, because I've ran like a little bit of it for Skylar's group, and now I've run it for this, and I'm like, this definitely needs some work. So we'll work on it.
Cool. Also, this is the first episode we're recording after Thanksgiving. So how was your Thanksgiving?
Pretty good. Went to the cousin's place. They have a lot of extended family and stuff that shows up, so they have a really big place. So it's a lot of really good food. So
yeah,
I can't say no. Even though my most of my family now, they were more towards the West Coast. Now they've moved into Chicago, so they're. It's not like a short drive, but it's not like...
It's in Chicago, Jeff.
It is in Chicago. Yeah. And they were like, you can come over here for Thanksgiving this year since, we're all going to be over here. And
I'm shaking my head.
And I was like,
Jeff.
Well, but the food, like, and not to say that my parents' food is bad. It's actually really good. They like food a lot, except for they've changed their diet again. They have gone for a vegan diet.
Okay.
And so I was like, you know what? I'm going to sit this one out. But I will be going out there for Christmas. So.
Okay.
So I have nothing against vegans.
Yeah.
I just really wanted...
Meat.
I was like, it's Thanksgiving, and like I've been going to my cousin's for years.
Yeah.
And so like I want that that starchy, meaty, like I just throw everything on the plate and mix it all together because it's all starch and meat and it doesn't matter. It's just gonna taste amazing.
Yeah. So I made 2 turkeys. I smoked one of them and I roasted the other.
Right. Yeah. I had a sample platter.
Yes. I think they both turned out pretty good. I'm trying to decide which one was better. It's also a question of whether the smoked one was worth all of the, even if it was a little bit better, was it so good that it was worth 10 hours of constantly checking the wood chips and everything.
Now there's definitely more you can do with the smoker.
There is. Yeah. I'm going to experiment with a few things around Christmas time and
brisket.
See. I am interested in making some brisket or some ribs.
Oh yes.
Because I've never actually made, I've made a kind of ribs in the slow cooker, but like, I'm blanking on what it's called. It's not actually ribs.
Oh yeah, I think I remember you doing that.
Short ribs or something.
Well, I mean,
they're not actually ribs. I don't.
Well,
know.
there is short ribs where it's like there's the back rib and the short rib. And I don't. Yeah.
Anyway,
this isn't dinner party conflict.
Right. So Thanksgiving was pretty good. There was a little bit of family drama, particularly involving potatoes, of all things. And I worked that into the library game that I ran last week as well. Also, we did our arcade stream a few days ago.
Yeah, that was fun.
That was a lot of fun. And it is online, so anybody who wants to can go and watch it.
Yep. It'll still be on the Twitch channel, so twitch.tv/FriendQuestStream, and you can watch it on there.
Yeah.
The last game we played was so fun.
Yep. Ninja Baseball Batman.
Oh, it's so good.
Great game.
It was amazing.
We started playing it and we didn't want to stop until we were done. It was that good.
We just kept hitting the quarter button. Just nope. Yep. We're getting through this.
Yeah. Unfortunately, our friend Peter was not able to join us for that. He ended up having to work that day. But
that was
you, me, and Steve. We had a good time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. So I do look forward to doing another one.
Yeah.
Sometime in the future. We'll let you guys know when when we make some plans.
Yeah, and I've already got a list of little tweaks and ideas I want to do for just on the technical side.
Oh yeah, because we had some audio issues this time, didn't we?
I'm not exactly sure how that happened, but there's a few little fancy things I want to do for next time. So
Sure. So one more thing I want to mention before we get started is so I mentioned last episode that the Crit Academy Unearthed Tips and Tricks book that I helped write, it's coming out. By the time this episode comes out, it will already be available for purchase.
Oh, nice.
It's coming out on December 1st. So as we record this, that's still a few days away. But when this episode comes out, you can go and you can buy the Unearthed Tips and Tricks book from Crit Academy. Go buy it. It's a great book. And you'll get some, it's a great thing. It'll be a great product to have. I think at the moment it's just PDF. I think like with DM's Guild, you have to have a certain number of customers or something before you can get like a physical book. So I don't think we'll have a physical book for this, but maybe for the sequel or something.
Yeah.
So
it's potentially somewhere down the line, maybe.
Yeah. But yeah, so I'm super excited about there being a product out there that you can buy that, has my name somewhere in it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
So you want to go ahead and get into this episode?
Sure.
Okay. I want you to imagine that you're at the tavern. You just come back from an adventure and you're having a drink, and then somebody comes and taps you on the shoulder, and you notice like they tapped you on the shoulder with a dart. They've got a handful. They didn't like stab you with it. They like tapped you with the little feathered side.
Is it poison tipped? Oh no, not again.
And so they have a handful. It's a gentleman is not 30 feet tall. Does not have red scales. I'm taking this back a little bit.
I'm suspicious.
All right. What you don't realize is that the tavern is the dragon. Anyway, so this gentleman taps you on the shoulder and he says, "Hey, I heard you're pretty good with thrown weapon. I thought maybe you might be interested in a little friendly competition of darts." And he points over at the dartboard.
Oh, yeah, sure. And I could take another swig of my drink and join him.
What you don't realize is that drink was the dragon.
Dang it.
So
dragons everywhere.
So this gentleman, he goes and he throws some dice. He throws some darts, and this guy's pretty good. But you're pretty good too. So go ahead and give me a D20 roll. See how well you can throw those. Yeah. I keep confusing these with dice. See how well you can throw these darts.
Throw the darts have like the little tail at the end is dice pattern.
There you go. You have advantage.
I sure do.
Was that a 2 or
that was a 3?
3. Okay.
Wow.
You think that someone might have spiked your drink?
I think
in
so.
an effort to make you look foolish in front of this dart player.
Yeah.
Because you grab the darts, you do your patented like behind the back spin throw.
I do the perfect cast from the Goofy movie.
There you go. And the dart lands in somebody's drink.
Oh, no.
So you get a second try, you throw it, and that one, it hits the wall. However, it hits the wrong wall. So
the one behind me.
Needless to say, you have lost this game of darts. And the gentleman says, it's quite a shame because I was about if you won, I was gonna give you this here map. And he pulls out a map and he like unfurls it, and you can see in big bold letters at the top that this is a map that leads directly to the Dragon's Hoard.
I need a rematch.
Unfortunately, you will not be making it to the Dragon's Hoard.
Dang it!
But you have an inside scoop, because I can tell you what the item is in the Dragon's Hoard today.
All right.
Today's Dragon's Hoard item was submitted by Adam on Discord, and it is the Dagger of Many Daggers. Now, you upon seeing the title of this, you thought that this was one of those like silly items that we talked about a couple weeks ago. It is not. This is actually
like the
a legitimate.
The ring of finger guns.
Exactly.
The dagger of daggers.
This is a legitimate item.
It's still a great name. Like
it is. It's a great name. Anyway, so this is a dagger. It doesn't have a physical description, however, it does have a picture. So in the picture, it's a dagger with a blue wrapped hilt, and at the end, the pommel has a big gold ring, which I think is actually referenced in the item, so I felt the need to describe what it looks like. So anyway, the first time this dagger gets thrown is always an interesting experience for the user. They swear that they only threw one, but those 7 daggers they threw were not imaginary. When confronted on how they managed to throw 5 daggers at once, they often reply how they only threw 3. When it was pointed out that they actually threw 8, yet there was only 1 dagger in the dummy, it left everyone scratching their heads.
Oh my goodness. I'm scratching my head.
Yeah, the Dagger of Many Daggers works with experimental temporal magics.
Oh.
While spinning, such as when it is thrown, the gold ring on the end activates and essentially pulls a copy of itself from a number of temporal possibilities where it was thrown. The temporal loop is not picky, however, nor can it be, and can pull copies that were destined to miss. This item requires attunement, and the way that it works is the Dagger of Many Daggers is a +1 magical dagger and acts as normal when used as a melee weapon. The temporal loop kicks in when the dagger is thrown. The item has only 1 charge, and when it is thrown as part of a ranged attack, you may expend the charge. If you do, the dagger flies as normal, but it begins to multiply mid-air. Roll 2d4, you gain that many extra ranged attacks with the Dagger of Many Daggers against your chosen target. The item regains its charge after an hour after its use, so I'm saying I'd say a short rest.
Sure.
So yeah, it's fairly simple in how it works. You make a ranged attack with it like you're throwing a dagger. You spend the charge, and then you make 2d4 additional attacks against your target.
That could be potentially very devastating.
Very devastating, yes, especially if you have
advantage sneak attack.
Well, sneak attack would only apply to one of them because you only get it once per turn.
Oh, sure. Okay.
But
All
still,
right, good.
There are other things
Yes.
that you can do to make this real powerful.
Good. I was scared for a minute.
Right. So yeah, it's a dagger. You throw it, and suddenly there's 6 daggers sticking out of the bad guy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I really like that it's not it just does extra damage because there's more of them. I like it that they all still have a chance to fail because it's I like this temporal loop flavor. It's really good.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is really cool.
Yeah, especially devastating with advantage, just because you're that much more likely to hit with all of them.
Yeah. It's not often I want to make a throwing weapon character.
Yeah.
But getting my hands on one of these things, I would be like, yeah, okay, I'm going all in on throwing weapons. That's fine.
It's pretty cool. And it's not going to be more than once per encounter. It's probably only going to be a couple times per session because how often are you taking a short rest?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's really cool. I love the image of you throw the thing and then a whole bunch just split off from it.
It might be a neat use of it is
Sure.
something that you're not sure what its AC is.
Ooh.
So it's sort of a meta use, but I mean it's got a temporal loop effect. I don't know.
Sure.
But yeah, so you're throwing several daggers at it, and so you get you're rolling several times, and so
its AC is higher than 12.
Yeah.
It's lower than 17.
Right.
It's higher than 15.
It's definitely higher than 3. Dang it.
Exactly.
So yeah, it'd be a nice way to sort of zero in on an AC if you really want to know it.
Yeah.
So that's kind of cool. But yeah, that's neat. I like this a lot.
Yeah, I'm getting an image of the Matrix or something like that. Not necessarily. I mean, this is explicitly a time vortex or whatever.
Sure.
But if it were sort of you manipulate the system or whatever, and suddenly that thing you threw, there's it.
I can see the Matrix.
You're hacking into reality to.
There is no
to change
spoon.
it.
There's 2d4 knives.
Yeah, so that's the Dagger of Many Daggers. Just a fairly simple, fun item. I think it's really cool. I would love to throw that in a game and see what happens. What if I threw that in a game and then suddenly there were 2d4 more of them? Anyway,
and this, with a weapon like this could be easily dumbed down.
Sure.
If you want to give it to a character, a player earlier on,
make it 1d4.
Make it 1d4. Make it not +1, but at least it counts as magical.
Sure.
Still magical. Doesn't have the +1 bonus. Only 1d4. So maybe that could be something that you give to a character pretty early on in the adventure, and it could define the rest of their character's build.
Certainly. Yeah.
I know in plenty of games where I have a build in mind, and then I come across a really nice item, and I'm like, yeah, screw that plan I had. I'm going all in on this.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's sort of the same thing, but when I was running the Age of Worms campaign, before we started to run it, like one of the adventures involved these 2 swords that the players can get.
Oh, right, yeah.
And I remember Jay saw the picture of those 2 swords, and he was like, I want to build my character around getting those 2 swords someday.
Yep. Yeah, there's always
and that was fine with me.
There's that anchor point where you're just like, okay, I know what I'm doing.
Yeah. So yeah, this is really cool. Thank you very much, Adam. Jeff, if anybody wanted to submit magic items for us to discuss on the Dragon's Hoard, or if they have questions for us to discuss, or stories for the funeral pyre, how would they get those to us?
They could send us an email at interpartyconflict@gmail.com.
Yes. Also, before we go any further, we have a giveaway to give away. We're giving away a copy of Chapel on the Cliffs, courtesy of Goblin Stones, a great low-level 5th edition adventure. So, Jeff, who is our winner today?
Our winner today is Happy Gilmore.
Yes. Winner.
Gobble, gobble, gobble.
Congratulations, the Adam Sandler character from the a movie from the 1998.
That's the golf one, right?
That's the golf one. Yeah.
It's been so long since I've seen an Adam Sandler movie.
Right. Yeah, the entry that we got is the name that he goes by is Happy Gilmore. So congratulations, Happy Gilmore. You should get this within the next couple days. If you don't get it, let us know. I always get a confirmation email with all the data in it, so I can pass that on. And be sure to let Goblin Stone know if you like it or if you don't like it, so they can refine their craft and continue to make great products.
Yep.
And also, I want to direct everybody to go check out our Patreon. Patreon is an online platform where you can pledge to donate a certain amount of money per month to us or some other content creator, and in return, you get bonus content.
Sure.
So if you go to our Patreon at patreon.com/InterPartyConflict, we've got outtakes on there. I write fantasy fiction every month and put that out there for all of our patrons. We also have bonus episodes. We have a monthly Roll20 game for our top tier patrons. We've got lots of fun stuff on there. So go and check that out and see if anything appeals to you. If it does, you can support the show and you can get cool bonus content in return.
Yeah.
I also want to direct everybody to check out a couple other podcasts on the Crit Nation Fellowship. Check out Crit Academy. It's a great podcast where Justin, Ian, and Brandon make new and reusable content for players and DMs alike. They're the ones that Justin mainly came up with all of the unearthed tips and tricks that are in that book that I mentioned earlier, and then I helped write it all out. So check them out. Check out the book that they came out with. And you should also check out D&D Character Lab. It's another great podcast where Garen and Dan make characters and then they pit them against each other and debate whose character is better. We were on their show a few weeks ago for their Halloween episode. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Go check them out. Great podcast. All right. You want to get into some questions, Jeff?
Yeah, sure.
Hey guys, Gabe from the future here. I was just editing this episode and I realized that in this upcoming section, I keep referencing the alert feat, and I realized that I'm thinking of the wrong feat. I meant the observant feat, not the alert feat. So anytime I say alert, in your mind, replace it with the word observant. Thank you.
All right. Our first question comes from Lost Ranger 17 on Reddit. What are your thoughts on passive checks in 5th edition, like passive perception?
Yeah, so let me explain what passive checks are.
Okay.
And then I'll explain my thoughts on them. I've got some thoughts. I've got like some conflicting thoughts on this.
Sure.
In 5th edition D&D, specifically with passive perception, but I mean there's no reason you couldn't do this with other skills too. Passive perception is usually going to be located on like everybody's character sheet. A lot of the time the DM will ask for passive perception when a campaign starts or when like a session starts or whatever. Passive perception is for anytime the dungeon master wants something that the players might not notice, that they aren't actively looking for.
Yeah.
So let's say an enemy goblin is trying to sneak up on the players while they're just hanging out.
Right.
The DM will probably roll a stealth check based on, the stealth check from whoever's sneaking around, and then compare the result to the player's passive perception. Because, of course, if the DM said to the player,
make a perception
check, the player is going to know, oh, shoot, something's happening. And so, especially if they roll low, if they roll like a 5, they're going to be like, oh, crap, guys, I didn't see something.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
So passive perception can be a very good tool for the DM to not clue the player in that something is going on. Another common passive skill check is passive insight. If somebody is lying to the players and the player is like, an NPC says something to a player, and then the DM rolls something, and then says to the player, "Hey, make an insight check." And the player is going to know that, it's going to be metagame, of course, but the player is going to have some idea that, like, well, something about what this guy is trying to tell me might not be 100% accurate, because generally speaking, like, you wouldn't make like a persuasion check on a player. Mm-hmm. Most DMs won't. I personally think that a player that is open to role playing their character, I don't think it's a problem, but a lot of people have an issue with trying to convince the player to do something, and I understand that you want the player to act how the player wants to act, but anyway, that's kind of a side issue. So passive perception is useful because it's for when the DM wants something to happen around the players, with the players not necessarily knowing that something is happening.
Right.
Another example is if there are traps. If your passive perception is above the DC of noticing a trap, then they're going to notice the trap. The DM doesn't have to have the player, hey, roll a perception check walking down this nondescript hallway. Mm-hmm. They don't have to clue the player in. It can just be, there's a trap there. If they don't notice it because their passive perception is too low, then, well, they walked into a trap, unless the players are saying, I'm actively looking for traps.
Sure, yeah.
So it's a very useful thing, and it's existed in like unofficial forms for, since time immemorial. I've mentioned that in previous games, I would sometimes roll a bunch of dice ahead of time, or use a random number generator and just like print out a spreadsheet with 100 random D20 rolls.
Yeah.
And then rather than ask for a check from the player, I'll have written down what the player's modifier is. I'll just check off the next number. And okay, this number that I checked off means that player would have rolled a 12 or something.
Sure, yeah.
Now, that has its own issues. A lot of people feel like if you do that, it takes the agency out of the player's hands because they didn't actually roll the dice.
But it's all about probability.
It's all about probability. Like, I think that a mature player can understand a DM that wants to do this. And doesn't mean the players have to like it. If they don't like it, the DM shouldn't do it.
Right.
But,
Yeah, no, I really do like that because, one, it's faster. Mm-hmm. You're not making noise, so the players don't know you're rolling a dice.
Exactly.
Because you can be using that for anything. You could just have like a mile-long list of, D20 rolls that you're just pulling from. And like, I think that's good because it's no different. Mm-hmm. Like, your probability, like people can argue all day, all day that their dice is going to give them a better roll than your dice.
Sure.
But really, that's not really the case. It's always there's always going to be a 5% chance, that you're going to roll a 20 or a 1.
Yeah, and I mean, like, if I would never do this without telling the players, without making it clear to the players that's what I was going to be doing. And if a player had an issue, I wouldn't do it. Mm-hmm. But there's a lot of little mind games that go on when you are running a game that are just part of running the game, and different people are gonna, are gonna react to them different ways. Like the whole act of not wanting the player to know that they're making a check is a little bit of a mind game, because you don't want the player to metagame even unintentionally. So that's why stuff like passive checks are useful.
Sure.
Now, I guess I didn't get into the actual mechanics of how it works. Basically, when you write down your passive perception, you basically just take 10, which is an average D20 roll, plus your modifier. So it is exactly like you rolled and got a 10. In almost every case, it is exactly like you rolled and got a 10, or you, quote unquote, took 10, which is what the mechanic was called in previous editions.
Yeah.
When you weren't under any sort of stress, if like combat, most of the time you could say, I'm just going to take 10, and you would just take an average roll, 10 plus your modifier. So that's kind of where this mechanic is coming from, from previous editions. I did say that in almost every case, it's going to be the same. There is one example that I know of that is different, and that is if you have the alert feat. Mm-hmm. One of its benefits is that it adds 5 to your passive perception.
Oh, neat.
Which is really handy.
Yeah.
Because that means like you're so good at spotting traps and such that even when you are not paying attention, you're still alert. Argument could be made that you are more alert when you're not paying attention than when you are paying attention.
Sure, yeah.
We'll get into that in just a second. So I mean that is a noteworthy difference between rolling a 10 and using passive perception.
Alert doesn't mean that you're not easily distracted.
Exactly. So that's how passive perception works. Any other skill, in theory, could work the same. You could have a passive insight. You could have a passive athletics if there's something that is going to be like a long, sustained thing, like you're swimming across a still lake. I could see someone just saying, just use your passive athletics. You don't need to be rolling for every 30 feet that you move.
Sure.
Just if your skill is high enough to, at average, make it across this lake, you can just do it. I'm not going to make you roll, Pretty much any skill could be a passive.
Yeah.
Now,
maybe there'd be like they should give like rogues a passive stealth or something like that.
Well, that's the thing. In third edition, there were so in third edition, like you could in theory take 10 on just about anything, but there were a lot of things you couldn't in combat. Like you couldn't take 10 on a check in combat because like you're under pressure. You can't just do an average job. But there were certain abilities, like a high-level rogue could choose certain skills that they could take 10 on even in combat.
Yeah.
Like you could take 10 on disable device to disarm a trap in combat. You could get an ability to take 10 on stealth, which would let you just do an average sneak. Artificers got that with use magic device and spellcraft checks, I think.
Yeah.
So there were ways to even use quote unquote passive checks in combat. But generally speaking, you couldn't. Now, in 5th edition, for most intents and purposes, it seems like it's the same thing. However, it isn't.
Okay.
There are notable differences that a lot of players have latched onto that, in my opinion, make passive perception terrible.
Okay.
And that is that apparently Jeremy Crawford gave the official word that your passive perception also counts as the lowest possible score that you can get on a perception check. What that means is that anytime you roll a perception check, if you roll less than your passive perception, you just use your passive perception instead. And I've played with people, one of the guys in my work D&D group, he lives and dies by that ruling. And in my opinion, that makes the entire thing pointless for reasons I will get into.
Okay.
So
that is weird.
It is weird. I'll just get this right out. This is the reason why I think that this is awful. That makes rolling pointless.
Yeah.
If the lowest you can get on a passive perception check is 10 plus your ability or plus your modifier, why are you even rolling a 20-sided die to begin with? Why aren't you rolling a d10 and then adding it to 10? Because when would you not use that? You cannot ever get lower than a 10 anymore. So why is it a d20 roll? And like I said, there is no hard and fast rule that you can't use passive any other skill. So by extension, literally every skill is a 10 on a roll plus your modifier or more.
Yeah, why isn't that the case? Yeah, why wouldn't that be the case with all the other skills?
I don't understand.
Because there's always the chance, like, somebody can just be naturally athletic, and they're like, they're just really good at being athletic. So, why can't they also have a passive athletics check?
Yeah. And that means that technically anybody can never roll less than a 10 on any skill check. And I've even heard people say that they allow passives for non-skill checks. If there's like an attack roll, if they're like attacking a training dummy or something, they can take 10 on that. If they're I don't know, making a save against something that whatever. There's by that extension, which I definitely don't agree with, there is no reason why you couldn't use passive everything, in which case, well, now no d20 roll can ever be below a 10, and then why are you playing the game?
I don't really
And I'll get into there are other issues why I think that passive perception kind of fails as a mechanic, but that ruling, I feel, misses the entire point of rolling, of everything.
Maybe it should just be like, it would be like perception is sort of outside of the skills at that point. Like it's a different mechanic.
Yeah, even if it is just on perception, which again, in the player's handbook, they say otherwise. But even if it was just on perception, then that means as a DM, why would I ever include a perception check that was lower than, I don't know, 15? Because there is literally no chance of anyone rolling under a 10. Even if they have a +0, okay, if they have a -1, I guess I could throw like a 10 in there, and there is a 5% chance that someone might fail it.
I feel like perception runs the risk of being someone's dump skill, or like one of the perception isn't always someone's first choice in their skills,
especially if there is like someone else in the group that does have really good perception. Right, that's one of those things that I could rationalize not focusing in because the rest of the party hasn't handled. But
see, with that ruling, I just want to make a character that's all about perception and just sees everything.
Everything at all times.
At all times. It's like you get the alert feat, you have really high wisdom. I'm sure there's plenty of other things that can boost that as well.
Yeah.
It's so like if you're always taking a 10 and you can never get any lower, it's just I'm gonna
that ruling.
I find every trap. I see every hiding monster. I find all the treasure before everybody else does.
Yeah, that ruling it blows my mind how misguided it is, and I don't understand how anyone could ever think that made sense.
I feel like I can just slightly feel. There's just the slightest bit of I can see where they're coming from.
Yeah.
But that's not how you do that.
Well, a little bit I can sort of see where they're coming from, but only if you don't know how to use this mechanic. And again, there's other reasons why I think that passive perception fails as a written mechanic.
All right.
But like this guy in my work D&D group, he has alert. He put everything he could into perception, and now anytime the DM calls for a perception check, he rolls, and then if he rolls lower than a 15, he says, he got like a 21 or something, because that's what his passive perception is.
Yeah.
And that's just bonkers. That has no place as a mechanic in a game. So let me explain why I think that passive perception fails, and why I guess by extension that ruling exists. Again, it's incredibly misguided no matter how you look at it. But if passive perception exists, the question has to be asked, when do you call for passive perception, and when do you have the players roll?
Okay.
Now, again, like I said, I would want to use something like passive perception whenever I don't want the players to know when they're making a check.
Right.
So like if I was doing something that I wanted it to be secret, I would have the players roll for it. But then that means that passive perception is a mechanic not for the characters. It is a mechanic for the players. What I mean by that is I'm not using this mechanic because of something that the character is skilled at. I'm using that mechanic specifically to trick the players, or specifically to engineer what the players are perceiving.
Yeah.
Which is a weird thing to have as a mechanic. So if there is somebody sneaking, do you always use passive perception if someone is like sneaking up on the players? If not, when do you not use it? Because oftentimes I have no problem with the players knowing if there's something coming, so I will have the players roll perception.
Mm-hmm.
But then what if a player rolls low? Can they then ask to use their passive perception instead? Because the game isn't really clear, and there isn't really a reason why or why not.
Mm-hmm.
And so what does that say about the mechanic? Is this mechanic like necessary, or is it not necessary? If it's necessary, there should be rules on exactly what situations you use it in, and it should be clear to me as a DM when I'm going to use it and when I'm not. Because if it is just at the whim of the DM, then it's like, well, that's a weird mechanic to just have just for whenever the DM remembers it's there.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm making any sense with this, but it's a sloppy mechanic as written.
Yeah, it is interesting because you're right. It's a mechanic that is aimed at the players, but if you're not using that and you still don't want the players to know what's coming, like you basically have to say like, oh, you got snuck up on.
Yeah.
And at that point, the character who put his points into perception or just like thinks his character is very alert or whatever.
Somebody is going to have issue with that.
Somebody's going to be like,
the gaming table.
Well, how come I didn't hear him coming? It was like, oh well, you were distracted. No, I wasn't. I was watching.
Yeah.
The roads. Oh well, they came from the other road.
Right.
You just get one of those battles. So like I feel like there needs to be that mechanic, because
I like the idea of the mechanic. Like I said, I've used this mechanic in previous editions, but when it's in the book, players are going to ask, "Can I use my passive perception?"
Yeah,
you know what I mean. Like if a mechanic, if there's a stat on my sheet, there is some part of me that feels like I should be able to use this mechanic if I want to.
Maybe this should be one of those things that's not on the character sheet and isn't in the player's handbook. It's in the DMG.
I can definitely see that. Not being on the character sheet, like I agree, because I did just say pretty much, like I definitely said what I feel, and that does agree with that. But I feel like then it puts a little bit of extra work. It makes it extra work for the DM to make sure that they ask the player, hey, what's your perception modifier, and so on. And like, I like the idea of there being a feat that increases it.
Sure.
You know what I mean? It's just, I can understand it being on the sheet, because then it's very simple for the DM to say, what's your passive perception? But again, it being on the sheet leads to a player assumption that is bad for the game.
Yeah. I think it is good practice for a DM to like those little shorthand like card things that Justin uses. Like, you print them out and you just like, it's just the stats and like the passive perception, AC, hit points, the stuff you need at a glance as a DM. It's a good practice to have those on hand of all your players.
Yeah.
So you don't have to ask them it's basically the same as saying roll perception as it is like, hey, what's your passive perception? You know,
pretty much. Yeah. If the DM hasn't written it down beforehand, it does kind of defeat the purpose.
Right. I mean, you could like glance over at their sheet, but that alone is also like, it's like, oh, what are you going to do to me? Like, why are you looking at my sheet?
Now, if there were like hard and fast rules on when you use passive perception and when you don't, I think that it could work. If it was that, when the party is not in combat and, like this specific thing has happened, then they use passive perception in regards to this specific thing. I could see that. I would feel better about it in that case. I definitely don't like it being just, oh yeah, you can use it whenever you roll below this. That's idiotic. But then a question comes to mind, like, let's say everyone in the party has a passive perception of like 15 or 16 or something. Like everybody has invested in perception.
Okay.
I, as a DM, feel like I can never put traps in that have below that passive perception.
Yeah.
But then if I put traps in that have a passive perception DC of above the entire party, then I feel like, well, now I'm being unfair, because literally every trap nobody's ever going to notice unless they... Well, I guess that's actually the difference, is unless the party actively says they're going to search for traps.
But it does feel like you are reacting almost unfairly against the player's stats. Like, when a player builds their character in a certain way and like you thwart them at every turn, that sort of a thing. Like there is good reason to do that, because you want it to be a challenge.
Sure.
You do want it to be like balanced and challenged and everything. But then when you start doing that for one player's character, then it might, negatively affect everybody else's gameplay and stuff.
I think my issue with it is just the fact that it takes away the random aspect of it. Like I mentioned that I would have a sheet of random numbers that either I rolled or I had a random number generator generate. I like that because they might get a 7, they might get a 15. With it being passive perception is just a 10, then they've removed the random element. Now, anytime I put something in with a specific DC, I know before they encounter it whether they are going to succeed or not.
Yeah.
Could you imagine D&D if all of the rolls were already, like, I could look at a monster and know 100% which attacks are going to hit, which saves are going to make, they're going to succeed on, how much damage, everything. It would be awful. That's like, what's the point of playing the game if there isn't the random element?
Yeah.
Now, even if I've rolled them ahead of time, sure, I can look at it in theory and know what a roll is going to be before I check off that number, but there was still a random number at play. And that's why I think that allowing passive perception to be the floor for your checks is stupid because you're making it a random check, but you're making it so that the only random possibilities are good.
Yeah.
The only random possibilities are better than average.
Right.
And that defeats the entire purpose of rolling a 20-sided die if you're going to ignore all numbers on the bottom half of that.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense that every other skill you just have this random chance of doing poorly. Like the idea is that oops, there is this random chance of failure at all times, which I do argue a lot that I hate about the game because it's like I say I do put all my points into perception and I get the alert feat and stuff like that, but there's still a chance I'm going to roll a 1 and it's going to be terrible and I'm going to be really upset because I used up all of my resources in this one aspect of my character.
Yeah.
And I'm at the mercy of the dice. So as a player, I can see oh, that's really cool. I don't have to worry about that anymore. But it does seem really weird that it's if they're going to make that, if that's an official ruling, that this is how this one skill works.
Yeah.
But you can interpret that as all skills because the book says that you can use a passive for any of the other skills.
Right.
Although I'm assuming they only specified passive perception.
I guess, yeah, but
you could still argue.
You could argue that because it's the same,
That's so weird. That is a really weird ruling. I did not expect that.
I had heard people ask that specific question before, like on Facebook and stuff, and every time I would be like, "Why in the world would that be? Why would that be a floor for all of your perception checks?"
Yeah.
But then I was on Twitter and I saw an actual ruling from one of the people that made the game, and I was like, "No!
Oh, good God!
No! What have you done?"
Somewhere in the back of my mind, I was thinking giving advantage or disadvantage to the passive perception, but not necessarily you're not giving it you're not rolling it twice because obviously it's going to be the same both times.
Right.
But it would be if they would technically have advantage, it would be a 15. If they would have disadvantage, it'd be a 5 instead.
Sure.
So if there was some circumstance that it was it's a really dark room, disadvantage, it's too bright, it's the sun is glaring in their eyes or something like that, disadvantage, or
I can see that, and maybe that would work. I just, again, I feel like if you take away the random number, then I feel like I'm the one who's deciding whether they succeed or fail. Whereas whether that is true or not about other things, it feels less like that in other cases.
It really just feels like passive perception should just be a tool for the DM, not a aspect of a character.
It should be in the Dungeon Master's Guide, and it should be like, hey, here is an optional rule that you can use at your own risk. Here's how we suggest you do it.
Right, yeah. It's basically the way you do your chart of random numbers. Mm-hmm. That could be that could be in the same section of the optional rules there. It's you could do it if you don't want your players to know something's up, either do this or do this, use the passive perception or use a random number thing, a list of numbers. It's just it really does seem like this is more a thing that the DM should be using to kind of streamline stuff,
right?
Not something that not an option for the players to take advantage of and build their characters around. You can build your character around having a good perception. That's a good idea because you do want to be able to see traps and hiding creatures. But I think this is just way too ripe for abuse.
Here's a suggestion because, I would say if I could give a suggestion for what should be done about passive perception, remove it. Okay. The easiest thing to do is to just remove it. It gets rid of all of these problems. But then I was saying earlier that I like the fact that alert adds to your passive perception. I think that's cool. Here's a solution to that. Make it so that alert gives you a +5 on perception checks against specific things.
Sure.
Maybe it gives, I don't know exactly which things, but maybe it gives you a +5 on all perception checks when spotting traps.
Mm-hmm.
That would be good. It wouldn't be as useful as +5 to your passive perception because passive perception would theoretically apply to more things, but that's what it's meant to do. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I'd say detecting traps and stealth, and like
stealth enemies while not in combat. Or
right?
something.
Yeah. It's just that's so weird. That's so weird.
I know. I think that it is a neat concept, but its execution in 5th edition makes it completely worthless. Makes it fails at what it is meant to do in every way.
Yeah. No, I've always just sort of thought of it as like, oh yeah, this is just a nice little tool, so I can be like, I can look over at all the characters and be like, okay, who's got the highest perception? Oh yeah, you notice this.
Sure. And that's how I use it most of the time, honestly. Yeah. I mean, I haven't really been too secretive about a lot of stuff because most of the games that I'm running are like games at the library where, it's beginners and I'm not really trying to play those little mind games on the players.
Yeah.
So I haven't really had a need for it, but I do like, oh, you're the one that notices this thing because you have the highest passive perception.
Yeah. I feel like the downside to that is it's going to be the same person every time.
That's true. That's true.
So like no one's ever going to be in this, that's the only person who ever is going to be in the spotlight in those situations unless like the group splits up, which you shouldn't want your players to do anyway.
Yeah.
So that just complicates things.
The game may just need a focus away from perception being so ubiquitous. Like, yeah, perception is important, but I would say that if you are having the players make far more perception checks than any other skill, you should probably change something up.
Sure.
Because I would wager that most DMs do have 5 times as many perception checks as any other skill. Yeah. Maybe I'm a bit off on that, but I guarantee you it is more than it is. It is the most.
Yeah, for sure. Because it's a game in the realm of imagination. Like you have to figure out a way for your characters to perceive things.
Right.
It's a very important tool.
Yeah. And sorry, I just thought of a better way to word what I was trying to say earlier about using passive perception as opposed to just regular perception. I think the rule of thumb is that if a player says, I want to look for this, or I'm going to keep a lookout for this thing, like if the player is actively doing something, you wouldn't be using passive perception, presumably, right? Because it is passive.
Right.
But if they have alert, a player could feasibly say, I'm not going to actively look because then my check is lower. You know what I mean?
Huh.
And if a player is actively choosing not to do something because they are better at it when they're not trying to do it, that means you've done something wrong in the development process.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry, that just came to my head.
Maybe it should be if the player says, like, I'm on the lookout for something, that's when you use passive perception. But
then what if they don't do that and something does sneak up on them? Do they just automatically fail?
If something
like that's the conundrum.
Yeah. That's so weird. This is bonkers, Gabe.
It's the fact that they actually put it in the rules makes so many more problems than if it was just like a DM little like trick that they were doing.
Well, it's like, now I can just see forever. So
pretty much.
I'm just gonna. Oh goodness. I'm gonna put that into all my character builds now.
Yeah.
Like, because I have to. It's in the rules now, so I have to like keep that in mind. Like, well, man, that is weird. That is a weird ruling.
It's a very weird mechanic that it led to so many problems.
I didn't think it was that weird before. Thanks, Gabe.
You're welcome.
Jeez,
You're welcome.
I thought it was just like, well, I
live in my world.
Yeah, I can just use this when I need it, and that's all that will ever happen to it. Like, no, there's character builds based, purely on perception and exploiting it, and like, well, crap.
Yeah.
All right. Ugh.
Yeah. So.
Feels like a really glaring hole too.
It does.
Now that I've made my perception check.
Now you can't unsee it.
Now I can't unsee it.
Yeah.
Dang.
Yeah. So those are my thoughts on passive checks. I think they're a neat idea, but the execution is so bad.
Mm.
Yeah.
Well, dang.
Well, so that'll I think I'll do it for our all of our regular questions for today.
Sure.
That one, that I had a lot to say about that one. I figured that would probably be
that was one of those classic Gabe rant sort of situations.
I guess. So let's move on to our social media discussion questions.
Sure.
So the one from last week was, what was your favorite magic item that was crafted specifically for your character?
Oh yeah, I said the sword from the Age of Worms campaign.
Yes, and I said I had a. It was an amulet. I actually don't know if I said what it was. It was an amulet that my character had that it was like a signifier of who he was back in his home world, and Chris like enhanced it so that it like basically all of my like weaknesses, I had like really low perception. It increased my perception. It gave me like a bonus to AC and so on and so on. So it did a bunch of cool stuff.
Yeah, the sword you gave me basically, because I was trying out a new class that wasn't working out super well, and then I multi-classed into Warlock because that had just come out at the time.
Right.
And I was liking that a lot more. So Gabe basically was like, here's this weapon that sort of, like, it had this magical effect that sort of let you have the benefits of being full Warlock.
Well, kind of. So what it did, I noticed that I figured the campaign was going to go till about 20th level. And because of how you had split up your classes, I think you had 10 levels of Savant, and then you would presumably by the end of the campaign have 10 levels of Warlock. I saw that if that held true, you would never get to the point where you had any of like the top tier Warlock abilities.
Yeah.
You would be like just a few levels short of getting some of the really, really good Warlock abilities. And so I was thinking about it, and the item that Steve had described to me from when you guys played when you were kids was that like you had this emerald sword that had been like passed down from generations or something.
I don't know. It was some weird fantasy garble I came up as a kid.
I don't know. So how I translated that was that this was a sword that had been passed down. It had absorbed knowledge from everybody that had wielded it. And so when I gave it to you, after 24 hours, so basically after becoming attuned to it, I decided that it would give you all of the class abilities of any classes that you had 4 levels higher. So like you counted your class as 4 levels higher for purposes of class abilities, which I went with 4, I think, because there was practiced spellcaster, which was a feat that didn't do this, did something kind of similar. That was plus 4 levels.
Sure.
And then I let it, and also because if I gave you 4 more levels, that meant that like at 20th level, you would have one of those top tier Warlock abilities.
Sure,
so you'd be like right at that point.
Yeah, I wasn't gonna miss out on the juicy bits.
Right. And then now, if I were to give this, if this were just like an item that existed in a book somewhere that anybody could buy, this would be one of the most broken items ever created, because you could take 1 level of this, 1 level of that, 1 level of that, and then basically be like a 50th level character by the time you were at level 10 or something. But I knew that I was giving it to you, and no offense, your character was the least mechanically powerful character.
I tend to try stuff out and end up gimping my character in some way.
Sure.
Which is why I've moved to power gaming.
Sure. So I gave it to you knowing that it would be most well fitted for your character and the least dangerous in your hands. So I gave that to you. I also even specified that you didn't have to be wielding it to get its effects. It just had to be like
in my possession.
In your possession, whatever that meant, because I didn't want you to be tied down to using this specific weapon.
Right. Although I did eventually upgrade it. Like this thing was like the extra levels alone, without that, it was still pretty cool, because I leveled it up. Like I enchanted it to have I gave it like Ghost Touch. Did it give me Blind Sight? Was that a thing?
I
think that might have been a different character.
I don't think so.
Because there was like a Faerun book or something that like you could enchant a weapon to give you that gives you Blind Sight, but it didn't count towards like the modifier, because you can only have like plus 10 worth of stuff on it.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Some things were just like a flat amount.
It was a flat money
I know
cost.
what you're talking about.
So like which that was like, that's like Blind Sight. That's crazy.
Yeah, you might have had. I don't know.
I might have been a different character.
But you enchanted it so that it could turn into different materials.
It was like sure striking. It could turn into different materials. It can turn into any type of weapon.
Yeah.
Like I wanted to make it so like at any point I can turn it into something that's going to be useful.
Yeah.
Like it's like I was like, what are we fighting? Okay, I'm going to turn it into a cold iron.
Cold iron rapier, because this thing has cold iron and piercing damage reduction.
Yeah. So
I like how it eventually turned into like that was your way of being able to deal damage no matter what. It wasn't a ton of damage, but it was damage, and there was nothing I could do to resist it.
Yeah, I had it like it's persistent and consistent damage. It was just gonna happen, and I was happy with it. So
Yeah, so that was a pretty cool weapon, and again, it was from a previous character you had played. So
yeah, I liked it a lot.
Cool. So yeah, we've got a few responses, not a ton, but hey, we got, as long as we got some, that's all I need. Justin on Facebook says, the Banshee Shriek that was featured when I was on your show. It was glorious and dangerous. Like Austin Powers, I like to live dangerously. So yeah, that was a Dragon's Horde item we had back when Justin was on. I think almost around this time last year. I think we had him on like right around New Year's.
Okay.
I think
it would have been our like 50th episode.
I think it was on our 50th episode. He was on another episode before that. I don't think it was that one.
Okay.
But I could be wrong. Anyway. We also have Charlotte on Facebook says, I know what item I want and I keep badgering my DM, so hopefully I'll get it. I want a Speak with Animals ring or necklace. My character is Princess Wood Elf, who is a divine sorcerer. It's the one spell I want, but I don't have, as I can't learn it.
Oh, yeah.
I can definitely understand that.
Yeah, maybe for Christmas.
Sure.
Yeah, ask your DM for Christmas. Yeah, because Speak with Animals is not like super powerful in any way, but although it does pose more work for the DM, I feel like, because like coming up with like ways for animals to respond to things, I think could be kind of tricky. In Divinity Original Sin 2, which is the only one I really played, but there is like a feat you can take basically from the get-go that gives you like basically you get to be able to speak to animals.
Sure.
And there's plenty of animals in the game, and like there's a lot of like extra little things that you can find, or like little interesting stories that you might not know about if you couldn't speak to animals. Like there's like a dog you come upon, like a guard dog or something, that like if you had that feat it's at the very beginning of the game. If you had that feat, you can like you learn a little something about these dogs, like these guard dogs that the jailers or whatever are using.
Sure.
I don't know. It's just a neat little, you get all this little extra stuff, like, just a little bit of extra lore, because you learn a bit more about the world, because you're learning about it through a different perspective. So like, I think this could be really neat. Plus, I mean, like, if you're playing like the Disney princess type,
sure. Yeah, I guess it's a little bit more work for the DM, but it's also more plot hooks for the DM.
Yeah, that's true.
You can speak to animals, so the DM can get you information
right
through avenues that they wouldn't be able to otherwise. Dan on Facebook says, my druid Bruin Sylvanus has a cloak of raven feathers. It lets him change into a giant raven, cast spells whilst in this form, and talk. The wing feathers are tipped with silver, allowing a d6 roll to attack. I love the mechanics, but the story of how he got it and the backstory of who it belongs to are awesome. But party members read this, so I'm not going to air it. So, okay. Sure. Well, that's pretty cool. And Lath on Facebook says, Melric's Portable Workshop for my Forge Domain Cleric Melric. Much cool. Like Daern's Instant Fortress. Inside houses a forge in the middle of the wall opposite the entrance that can be turned on with a command word, and an anvil in the middle. And I think it says that it can be used to make a shelter, a table for armor, a grinding stone, and strap for sharpening. There's always enough material to make 2 weapons, and it resets after 8 hours of being used, and it appears next to the anvil.
Cool.
So yeah, that's pretty cool. And then it says everything else that applies to Daern's Instant Fortress also applies to Melric's Instant Workshop.
Nice. That's
pretty cool. I had an Artificer in Jay's Eberron campaign that it wasn't, I don't know if it was like crafted specifically for me, but Jay gave me something that was very similar. Like it was a little pocket workshop.
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah. I'd like this sort of thing. Like, and that goes back to when we were talking about crafting in last episode.
Mm-hmm.
Was it last
time? Boy, yeah. Boy, were we talking about crafting last episode.
But yeah, if your players really want to do crafting and stuff, let them do it. And and that would be a really nice item to give them if they just want to be that blacksmith guy, but you don't want them to be like, you want them to still be adventuring.
Sure.
So give them a way to do it on the go.
Yeah. On Reddit, user Takeover Mars says, my character blackmailed a dragon to have him enchant my rapier. And because I also did some nice things, he made sure it would be good and took his name with it. And then he gave us the stats for this weapon. It's called Ionis, I think. It's an intelligent rapier. However, I think I want to use this on a future episode of the Dragon's Horde. So,
okay.
So we'll leave that for that in the future. But yeah, it's pretty cool. Convinced a dragon blackmailed the dragon to enchant his rapier. And yeah, it sounds pretty cool. And then over on Twitter, Collins B says Ironbark from episode 65's Dragon's Horde. So that we covered that one. It's a sword called Dragon's Bark. We covered on an episode a few months ago. The sword that had no magic properties at first, but Kongu discovered its abilities after character development as it restored his lost memories. Where did your character get that scar discussion question? Also short-term madness table rules. So a whole bunch of, this is like a confluence of all of our favorite things are coming into coming together with the response to this question. And then the Cantrip responded on Twitter. I once played a healer that was utterly devoted to Ilona. After dying in her service, he was resurrected centuries later to continue his work. When he awoke, he was holding a living staff that boosted his healing magic. It needed to be watered daily or it would wither. And so that was John from the Cantrip. And yeah, again, I think did I mention earlier this episode that we were on the Cantrip?
Yes, we did.
Okay. I think I mentioned it earlier, but if I didn't, we were on the Cantrip recently. So go check out that episode of the Cantrip. So yes, great podcast. And then over on Discord, we actually didn't get any specific responses, but Adam B said, I've never had one given to me, but a lot of the ones I've submitted to the show have been crafted for my players.
Oh, sure.
So
cool.
So yeah, we're always happy to get those for the show.
Didn't he make he made the daggers, right? Was it Adam? Was it this Adam?
Oh shoot, it was. Yes. So Adam Adam created the dagger of many daggers. So
yeah.
Thank you, Adam. So then the social media question for this week is going to be, do you keep track of carrying capacity and encumbrance in games? Why or why not?
I feel like we usually don't. There are a couple characters where it kind of needs to come in play. Yeah. Like there was a character where like I was like, I'm gonna have like every set of tools that I possibly can. That my starting character can possibly afford. And at that point I was like, well, I should try and actually figure out if I can carry all this. And so I calculated it all. I'm like, all right, yeah, this works out. I won't be encumbered. And it was for a turtle character, so you didn't have to wear armor or anything. So that was fine. So yeah, like I feel like in most cases it's not going to become a thing, but like once you get into like if a character starts hoarding or something like that, you got to start thinking about it then.
Right. So my answer is no, because it's boring. However, if a player tried to abuse it, all right, fine, you've tipped my hand. I will start keeping track of encumbrance,
right?
Just because you've made it obvious that you're trying to break the game.
There was an alternate. Someone came up with it. I'm not sure where it came from, but just like a different way to deal with equipment and stuff, where you have like slots, sort of.
Okay.
And like certain things have like weight classes, where like a small item only takes up 1 slot, and a medium item takes up 2, and a large item takes up 3. And then you would have like you'd only really have a certain amount of things on you at a time, so you didn't have to worry about the exact weights and calculations and looking at your strength and stuff. Yeah. So like, that way you can, and it'd be like a short way to look at what you have. There's just less I feel like there's less to manage.
I guess it still just seems like too much to me. Like, just don't try to abuse it, and I won't make you keep track of it.
Right. Yeah.
Don't be like, oh, I want to carry this mountain or something. Like, okay.
No,
I want to grab some rocks and put them in my pockets. Okay, sure, you grab some rocks.
It's like, yeah, I'm gonna buy several wagons and fill them up with bread and cashews.
I think I was listening to a podcast where somebody was talking about they were in a campaign where the DM said like, okay, hey, you guys are gonna be like level 5. Go ahead and give yourself whatever non-magical gear you want, and also I'm not gonna be keeping track of encumbrance. And so then one player was like, okay, yeah, I have 5,000 suits of chainmail or 5,000 suits of plate mail. I'm going to start selling them. See you guys later. You go adventure. I'm going to make a ton of money selling all these things. It's like, no, that just, anyway, I'm sure that's a weird corner case, but
right.
Still.
Yeah.
Anyway. So yeah. Do you keep track of carrying capacity and encumbrance in games? Why or why not is the question. So give us some good answers to this. So with all of our questions out of the way for today, I think that we should let's take a deep breath. I think we're both thinking the same thing. So let's take a nap while we toss another log onto the funeral pyre. This funeral pyre story was submitted by Reddit user Mole12A. I think.
Okay.
And the story is, my very first character, a dwarf fighter who I've long forgotten the name of, knew that if someone didn't slow the dragon down, he'd destroy the world.
Oh.
He also knew that if he triggered the lava flow trap, he'd die, but so would the dragon. He held, they died, and the day was saved. He now rests eternal in Dwarven Valhalla, which is like regular Valhalla with lower tables and stouter Valkyries. So let's raise a glass in memory of the brave dwarf who saved the world at the expense of his own life.
Clink.
So that'll do it for today. To submit questions for us to discuss, items for the Dragon's Hoard, or stories for the funeral pyre, please email us at interpartyconflict@gmail.com. For show notes, links to media mentioned on the show, and running lists of questions and magic items, go to interpartyconflict.com. Join the discussion on social media. Find us on Facebook, facebook.com/interpartyconflict, on Reddit at r/interpartyconflict, on our Interparty Discord, or on Twitter at InPartyConflict for our weekly social media questions. Your answers might end up on the show. Find us on iTunes, Google Play Music, Stitcher, YouTube, anywhere you download podcasts. Please rate, review, subscribe, or just tell a friend. If you'd like to support the show, check out the rewards at patreon.com/interpartyconflict. There's a few different tiers, so anything you can spare, even $1 a month, would go towards making the show better, and you'll get bonus content for it. Jeff, tell us about FriendQuest.
FriendQuest is our YouTube channel where we play video games.
Yes. Check out my side project, the Arcade Memories Podcast. If you'd like to submit your own childhood memories of going to the arcade, record them or write them to me at arcadememoriespodcast@gmail.com. Also, head over to bit.ly/interpartyconflict to take a short survey about our show, what you like, what you don't like, etc. And just for taking it, you'll get 2 free printable board games courtesy of Mary and Tom over at hollandspiel.com. And our music is made by Boxcat Games from Nameless the Hacker's RPG. So, Jeff, until next time.
Gabe, my perception is so high I can see the music.